Melanie, where are you and what are you doing?
I can barely hear you, but I am in Beijing right now, halfway around on the other side of the world, in the middle of the night, remoting in to say hi and give you your 3 presentations from Beijing, China. So here they say, ni hao, hello, good morning.
I know your air cover is you're on assignment for Microsoft, but you're really working for the NSA and the CIA, so I completely understand if you can't tell us what you're doing. We're trying to figure out how to start running real.
Yeah, I am on, we are doing government work here. There's a few of us that are Microsoft partners, and we are actually today going to speak to leaving to go to speak to government officials about Office 365 and the business impact of bringing Office 365 to China. So we are on a goodwill trip, and it is Office 365 related. So for those of you that are interested in expanding globally, that may be an option for you in the future.
Well, at least your children's children will be global. What was that? Yeah, she's on a Microsoft-sponsored trip. Okay, so Melanie, we're ready to go out here at the new Microsoft offices in Manhattan. So introduce yourself. I think you know most of the people in the room because you're from this area, but there may be some who don't know who you are. Let's get going.
Absolutely. So welcome everyone. And Harry had actually sent me a photo of everyone, and I was looking at the faces, and I know quite a few of you in there. So I'm waving hi to everybody. I wish I could be there in person for you today, but
okay, we're waving back.
Thank you. That's awesome. Yeah. So I'll tell you a little bit about me and so far about this trip. Because I've only been here a couple of days, but the stories so far have been kind of funny. So I own a 365 practice as part of my business. A little bit about how I got into that. I am actually a cloud champ with 2 competencies underneath my belt, and one of them is that I work closely with small companies. So that's my niche. It came out of understanding that a lot of the MSPs, and probably a lot of us in the room today, were focusing on 10 seats and above. And I couldn't find anybody to give as a lifeline for these solopreneurs and the ones sub 5 seats. So, after understanding that and talking to providers in our area, I went and decided to join my own cloud division. So I'm technically born in the cloud. I'm not an MSP. I'm not an IT provider. Our firm is focused in 2 areas, between training and in the consulting side for road mapping the technologies and onboarding to SharePoint and Azure and BI and things like that. So we have more of a niche area, and then I work with a lot of providers, some of which are in the room. I work with a lot of providers to supplement their practice when it comes to SharePoint or help out in the areas of training and things like that. So anytime I hear MSP or IT provider that they need, I run the other direction and give them to one of you in the room. So today the goal is to talk about a couple of things. I'll start off with licensing. And before I dive in and mention that, I'll tell you a couple of things so far about this trip. We're not allowed to do any business because we are being watched, and we knew that beforehand. I have already gotten 1 virus on this machine since I've been here, and the first night that I checked into the hotel, there was a 3-inch bug in the corner, and so that's their way of saying you were officially bugged. So it's very interesting. The internet here, we switched hotels. And thankfully, it's a good thing because the internet here is much better, and I don't actually have to spend overnight at the Microsoft office here in Beijing. I'm able to do all of it from here. So a couple of funny stories so far. Oh, and one other thing. I broke the Visa passport when I was coming into line. They were trying to process my Visa and scan my passport, and the machine broke, and they had to send me to someone else. So all kinds of great fun, and hopefully I make it back and see everybody in person. And, all is good. So with that, I'm going to turn off the webcam piece because it will cut off at some point anyway, and then I'll focus on the slideshow here. So give me just a second, and So now as we kick this off and talk about licensing, it takes just a second for me to try and change the screen. So what we're seeing is basically there's two types of licenses. One with Office 365 is the home version, and the other one that we have available to us is the business version. And I know in my world, and I'm sure in yours, a lot of times we get these calls from people and they say, hey, I just bought a new computer. And a lot of us are thinking, wow, I wish you would have called me first, but okay, go ahead. And then they say, and you know, I have this Office 365 that I bought, and I have no idea why I can't connect to my Exchange, or why I can't get to SharePoint and those kind of things. All my files aren't there. And that's typically where we have to go through and explain to them that there are two versions of Office 365, and that there's a home version where you pay $99 a year, sometimes on discount, and then the other ones is everything else, where they can get different types of options for business that we've already prescribed for them. And there is no upgrade path. So I just want to make sure that for our conversation today that we are talking about the business version of Office 365, and that we're not speaking to the home version of Office 365 that may be out there. Since there is no conversion from home to business, that's where we really have to explain that it's the home version, it has different security parameters than what we would find with the business version, and that we really need to make sure that we're working on that business version of Office 365. Now, in general, what I'll do, and I know Grant may have already started to go through this a little bit earlier today, but I'll walk you through some of the core options of Office 365 because that's technically part of our licensing conversation to help understand. But what we find is that with Office 365, there's the core version of Office. But that core version isn't the same that we knew all along. So for example, we find that there's a standard version just in general of a license that we can buy for Office. And then there's the professional version that we buy for Office, and typically for our customers we end up buying the standard version, and the reason why is because they just need Word, Excel, and PowerPoint and Outlook. They don't necessarily need Microsoft Publisher, and they don't necessarily need Access. There are typically very few of those that we have to buy. So when it comes to Office 365 and looking at the pricing points, a lot of times we look at that and immediately say, oh, you don't need E3 because E3 includes Access and it includes Publisher. We'll just put you on E1. And that'll give you all the stuff that you need, or we'll put you on Exchange only. And when you buy a new computer, we'll just make sure that there's an OEM copy of Office included on there. But what we find is that there's many benefits to actually starting to use Office 365, and particularly speaking with this Pro Plus version. For example, one of the things that we have is now, in today's day and age, we have apps available on iPad. They're available on Android. They're available on the iPhones. And so we have to start thinking about, you know, basic compatibilities for those apps versus more options available when you subscribe to Office 365 Pro Plus. And what we find too is that a lot of times people will have work at their desk, but then they also have work at home too. So if you think about having to work at home plus a tablet device plus the desktop device, that's already 3 licenses. So to get the full benefit of working from a mobility standpoint, whether you're at home, whether you're on a device, or whether you're at your desk, we really have to start looking at whether or not Office 365 Pro Plus is a best fit. So as I'm telling you this, what I'm really saying is forget about the fact that it comes with Access and Publisher and start thinking about how many devices that person actually uses, and then license it out based on devices. We're starting to find fewer instances in the real world where people actually need or have just one device where we would need perpetual licensing. And while we can go and we can buy a standalone SKU of that office to install, so that way we can transfer it and bypass the OEM option. What we're really saying here is look at how many devices in total that you actually need, because if you're looking at OEM versus standard and you know that they have a tablet and you know that they work at their house, then that's going to change how we're going to do it. We're obviously not going to pay for that license 3 times, but if you pay for Office 365 with the Pro Plus, that gets you around it. And this, by the way, the Pro Plus is available as a standalone SKU, and a lot of people don't know that. They think that you have to bundle it together as everything, and the answer is you don't. That is a standalone SKU, and it runs between $12.50 and $15 a month on its own, depending on how you want to do it for the enterprise. And then there are bundled packages much cheaper for the small business side. So the next core component that we get to talk about here is file storage. And I know a lot of us may have seen SharePoint over the years, but may not have actually adopted it and turned it on for our customers, because even though it became a free option with Foundation as part of Windows Server, it was just never anything that people turned on and felt comfortable managing and supporting another product. It was, kind of this strange thing on an island somewhere, and we weren't necessarily always wanting to get to it and get people up and running, and unless they asked us to do it, we weren't turning it on or even letting them know that it exists in many cases. So with 365, it comes with 2 variants. One is the OneDrive for Business, renamed from SkyDrive, and then the other one is SharePoint. And keep in mind, this is the OneDrive Business version. So that OneDrive Business version does come with a terabyte of information. In beta right now, it is available for up to unlimited, but that isn't general availability full published yet. So the reason why I'm making sure to tell you that is because there is a serious distinction between using SharePoint and using OneDrive. And we'll go into that more later when we talk about SharePoint. But if I can plant the seed for you now, OneDrive has a limit per person, and it's 20,000 documents or items, so to speak. An item is a folder, an item is a document. So a folder inside of a document is automatically 2 items. And your limit in OneDrive per person is 20,000 items. So you can see how quick it is to fill up that OneDrive, which is why we don't necessarily have everybody move their business documents onto OneDrive. We would use SharePoint for that. SharePoint comes with a base storage for the company, and then you add incremental storage based on what you need per person. So, and then you can pay for extra storage. But the point is that any community document for the company goes into SharePoint. Personal documents that we would normally store on like a desktop or on a My Documents that get backed up in another way could theoretically move over to OneDrive and give them portability for their personal documents when, no matter where they're working, home, work, otherwise. So then we get into another component of web conferencing. And today, we know it as Link. It will soon be rebranded as Skype for Business. The technical preview came out last week. General availability is starting to roll out as of April, and definitely look for more information on that. But with web conferencing, you can have up to 250 people at one time. So for those of us that have customers in the web conferencing, that use web conferencing for their business, whether it be a GoToMeeting or they use JoinMe or they use WebEx, and you take a look at how much they're spending, especially when you hear they have WebEx, a lot of times they're spending anywhere from $60 to $120 per user license. And with the web conferencing piece here within Link, we get instant message options, we get document sharing options, we get screen sharing options, we can record meetings, you can do PC to PC calling by default, and you can have a webcast where only one person has a license and 249 other people can join on that webcast and be able to hear and connect and things like that. So for a standalone SKU, it's about $550 a month compared to $60 to $120 a month. So again, that's a viable option that we can offer as part of Office 365 to the customers. And then I know a lot of us in the room have migrated many customers already to Exchange. Exchange from server version. You get 50 gigabytes by default. One of the plans, E3, I have to mention to you, includes unlimited archiving. That's something a lot of people don't realize. Is a standalone SKU, it's only $3 extra per user per month. But if you do buy E3, that does include the option of Exchange with unlimited archiving included. So a lot of times we run into situations where we have local PST files to deal with and backup and things like that. And what we find now is that we have the ability to move around that and be able to have that unlimited archiving option completely available to us online and be able to have in here. So the last thing that I want to mention, because it's not going away, is Yammer. and I'm saying that sweetly because a lot of us are still getting used to Yammer and don't really see a time and a place for Yammer. And a lot of the reason why we don't see a time and a place for it is because we are trying to look at this option and be able to see, okay, well, where would customers actually use this? Should I even push it at all? And so what we're seeing now is that with Yammer, we actually can work in larger communities. And I know a lot of people don't actually like to say this if you're part of the Yammer community, but if you're trying to explain it to a customer, it really is Facebook for Business. It really does give us the ability to take a look at a document and give feedback on it to a community of people. You can like, you can reply, you can share a document that's stored somewhere else. But what you're also going to find is that in the future versions of Office and also in things like Skype for Business and things like that, Yammer will be included. So it's not going away, which is why I'm saying, you know, we should try and take a little bit closer look at it and embrace it as best we can. And when customers ask us what that Yammer thing is up at the top of the screen, we can start to explain what that is. It really does give us social media capability. Yammer has also been extended into every single Office plan. And so, like I said, it's really not going away. They just keep adding it and letting it creep into wherever Office lives and breathes. So, so it's definitely something to take a closer look at because it is available as an addition for all plans, just as part of the plan itself, no extra money that's needed. Server version still requires separate license and things like that for those things. Now, as we talk about the options that we have available to us, you can basically go through two different options. You can go through Advisor or you can go through Open. And I'll talk about each one of these. But basically, an advisor means that the customer is signing up through Microsoft and paying monthly direct through them. And then the way that we can actually white label as partners today is called Open. There's a new thing that's going to start to come through called CSP that you're going to hear more about. But thing. So for now, I'll just focus on the easy ones, which is Advisor and Open. But just keep in the back of your mind, CSP is something you were going to more, and by fall, I would say, is a really good time to start looking at CSP, especially for those of us that already have an established 365 practice. So some of the differences that we find between subscription and between Open. The first thing I'll talk about is on the subscription side. It is an annual thing, but you pay by month in the advisor model. So in other words, for the most part, when the customer signs on to Office 365, they sign up for an annual contract with a fixed price that's paid out monthly. And if they need to switch licenses, they can switch it in an instant. That's not a big deal at all. Whenever you're switching and changing licenses around, there's no penalty on, canceling that contract. But if you're trying to get out of that contract altogether, that's where you'll probably see a penalty in there. The other thing, too, is that the subscription is paid direct to Microsoft. If there are any partners that are in the room that are doing it otherwise, where they're providing their credit card information and things like that, that's technically a no-no, and don't ever tell me that you do that. So just know in general, everything should be paid direct through Microsoft with the customer credit card information. A PO option is available, by the way, for customers. And then the other thing with this, and some people like this and some people don't, but when it comes to the financial reporting of this, it can be considered an operating expense because it's an expense you're paying every single month. It's not an upfront capital investment that we're depreciating over the course of time like we would see with a traditional license. So some people find that more appealing, and others prefer the depreciation, and just depending on what the accountant says is best, that's the way you go, of course, but just know it can be considered an operating expense, and many accountants will consider that a change from what we would find with traditional licensing. Now, on the other side, when we talk about open licensing, let me just talk about for a minute what that really means. What it means is that you're calling up a distributor and you're saying, hey, I need so many licenses of this SKU of Office 365. And by the way, for those of us that are familiar with the distributor model, and there's 4 in total. D&H, which is a sponsor of the tour, of course, is a distributor. We also have Ingram Micro, and I have to say this because they exist and you should know. Ingram Micro, Tech Data, and Synnex are the other 3 options that we have available for distributors today. I know a lot of customers want to call CDW. CDW does have licensing, but you don't get the credit for it when the customer calls CDW. So that's why I'm mentioning 4 that you can get credit for that you're tied to be able to say you are the partner of record against that. Now, what that also means is when you're calling, you're prepaying that up front. For larger customers, financing options are available on Office 365, just like they would have for volume licensing and things like that. But at some point, Microsoft's being paid up front. Whether you're paying it through the distributor or financing options or whatever, you're paying for that license up front. The one difference that I'll mention here with Open is that when you are buying up front, you can pre-buy multiple years if you need to. So for example, if a customer, up to 3 years by the way, so if the customer needs to pre-buy licenses for multiple years because the accountant prefers they depreciate all of that, that is an option for you to do. Not available in the direct model for 365, available for Office 365 Open. What that also means, too, is that you're probably asking for the money up front from the customer because I'm assuming we don't, as partners, want to float all of that cash for the year just so that we can bill out on a monthly basis. So just like when you have a hardware refresh and where OEM license is included on that and where you're making the customer pay up front, this is the same kind of item that we would talk about with Office 365. From a licensing perspective, they would pay it on the open side all up front, and then they would have that license. And it's very similar to the volume license key, where you go into the portal and you plug in the volume license key, it validates, and you're good. Then the other thing here, too, is that it can be considered a capital expense, especially in the case where you're pre-buying for multiple years. You can still consider that. With accountants, in many cases, they still consider that a capital expense. So the reason why I want to mention why a distributor is so special, and we get into this just a little bit more later on when we talk about making money in today's sessions, but one of the things that I want to mention is that for you to get credit as a Microsoft partner, it needs in the Office 365 space to go through an Office license or a distributor in this case. So those 4 that I mentioned, those would be the 4 that you would align with. And I know a lot of us have some kind of commitment or alignment with a distributor today, whether it's D&H or one of the others. We have some kind of option. The other thing I want to make sure that you know that is because in order for you to get your cloud competencies, or in order for you to become a managed partner, so to speak, with Microsoft, where you have a dedicated person that supports you, you have to get out of the unmanaged bucket and get credit for the licenses. It's you're not going to get credit for the services, but you will get credit for the licenses. And that's why it's super important, especially when it comes to Office 365, to try and get through a distributor or become partner of record on the advisor, so that way you have the ability to get credit for that. And we'll talk about this later in making money, but one of the things that I want to plant now is that delegated rights, where you see all the partners on your portal, is separate from partner of record. They're two separate functions. You have to do it two different ways, and I want to make sure that everybody is getting credit for their sales where it's appealing to them. Especially when it comes to getting your cloud competencies and getting out of the unmanaged bucket that you may be in right now in Microsoft's eyes. So rather than the customer calling CDW and them managing the relationship because you don't want to deal with the burden of it, I'll ask you to open your eyes a little bit and try and see if that's an option for you as we go through the making money later today, because it really can be a way for you to make an impact in your own bottom line, but then also to be able to get through the unmanaged cycle and into the managed cycle with Microsoft. The other thing that I'll mention here is that special pricing is often available. In the subscription models, when the customer pays direct, there's no special pricing. There's no way around it. There's only one program, and it's ending on April 6th, that's offered, and that's for nonprofits C6 status. So there's no fancy discount or anything like that that the customer gets typically when we go through 365 Advisor. But on the other side, for open, there are many incentives available. And oftentimes what we find is that the distributor giving us a discount off of our volume that we do regularly with them may be an option, but then over and above, Microsoft has so many incentives and discounts available for you right now that it could actually become cheaper for the customer to pass that along than for them to go direct. So yes, the downside is they pay up front, but on the positive, it may be a cheaper price for them overall and be able to save them money too. Or you just tell them it's full price and you bank the money in your pocket too. That's an option. So so that's why a distributor is so special. I have to mention one other thing, which is enterprise agreement. And a lot of times in the small business space, we don't deal so much with enterprise. And we would kind of turn our head away and not normally think about it. With an enterprise agreement, it starts at 250 users. So believe it or not, it can still fall, that total number of users at 250 technically falls in the SMB space, but an enterprise agreement does not, just by general. It falls into a different bucket. So from the small business space, if you're doing an EA, the small business group will not get credit for it. So if you do have any representatives that you work with in the Microsoft space, for example, like John Cole is out of New York, Justin Raban is another one. Both of them will not get credit. You won't get credit in their territory for that enterprise agreement. But the reason why I'm mentioning this to you is because typically we start looking at enterprise agreements at around 200 seats. So if you have customers with 200 users and above, you might want to at least make a phone call over to one of the they aren't LARs anymore, but that's what I call them still. But anyway, there are plenty of software providers that do the licensing for enterprise agreements that are out there, and it might be better to to give them a call and just double check. The reason why is because it's 3-year term, it's upfront pricing, and there are special financing options available where they can pay monthly and all that great stuff. But the other thing that I particularly like from a partner standpoint is that you get what we call a double dip option on credit. You can get a credit tied to the deployment, who's actually the partner implementing the technology, but then you can also get a credit as the partner who is the one that helped assist with the deal. And the reason why I'm making sure that you know that is because basically on an enterprise agreement, whatever that amount ends up being, take that amount and multiply it by 30%, and that's the net amount you'll receive just as part of being the deal if you're both the partner of credit on the EA and you're the one deploying the services, which you would be. So from a profitability standpoint, it becomes a great thing to think about. If it's a company that's going to have explosive growth over the next few years, they're a startup, they're expanding quickly, things like that, that becomes a really good option for them. And that 200 seats, grows to 250 very quickly over the course of a few years, and then of course you're just truing up each year and buying extra licenses if you need them, things like that. So just know the enterprise agreement is available. Typically the licensing group starts looking at it around 200 seats and above, but from a profitability standpoint, it is a viable option for us as partners to take a look at. So as we are looking at this, one of the things that we get to think about is, from the advisor standpoint, you become the partner of record. And for those of us, and I've seen this from so many partners, and where they're running into situations where they're not supporting their Office 365, especially if we're new partners and we're not really on board yet with selling Office 365. A lot of times we just say, hey, just go through Microsoft Direct. If you're not going to do a service contract with us, or we don't have a standard in place yet for that service contract, then just go direct through Microsoft, call them directly, that's all fine. It's a really big issue if you are letting that walk away. And the reason why I'm telling you that, and again, this comes up more when we talk about profitability and making money later on today, but you want to always be the partner of record, regardless of whether or not there's a service agreement in place. And I'll just leave it at that for right now, but you want to make sure you're a partner of record of all of your accounts and all of your customers. And the reason why is because, quite frankly, you don't want anyone else stealing them away from you. And there are ways that people can do that, and I'll talk about that in the making money. The next thing is that with the subscription, you can manage the account through delegated admin rights, and that's, of course, separate from partner of record, where you can send them a delegated rights link and where you become the person that they access. One other thing that I'll mention on this really quick is that Microsoft has started changing their approach when if you have partner of record, it will show up in their support panel, and when they try and call Microsoft and your name as the partner is attached, they will actually push back and refer to you. So so that was one of the reasons why partners wouldn't necessarily be tied as partner of record, and why they just didn't feel comfortable, because the customer could go direct and bypass them, and then they wouldn't be able to bill out for their tickets and things like that that came up. And that has changed. So just so that you know, when a customer is on Advisor and they call over to Microsoft Help Desk, if there is a POR tied as partner of record, they will actually tell them that their partner is you and that they have to go through you. So, so that's a little bit of a saving grace for a partner when they're dealing with somebody going through a subscriber version. Then the other thing, too, is that you're receiving partner of record fees based off of partner status. So, for example, it can be anywhere from 6 to 20%, depending on if you're a cloud champ or what your status is in the rankings of cloud status and all of that wonderful thing that goes with it. But basically, if you had nothing and you were signed up to resell Office 365, at the bare minimum, you would be paid out 6%, and that's off of an annual thing. So basically what happens is, even though customer pays month to month, whatever the value of that annual fee is, multiply it by anywhere from 6 to 20%, and that's what you end up getting right now when we start talking about partner of record fees. So it is paid out upfront annually, and then residually after that on a monthly basis when they renew their contract. Now with Open is bought through a distributor. It is, like I mentioned, the only white label key option that's available, and it, as I said, it's just like volume licensing. So you would go into the portal, you would put in your license key, and it would activate, and then you'd be able to go from there. And then you'll also find that you can get credit through the distributor. So the way that it works, just to kind of give you a little bit of understanding, it's much like volume licensing. So the distributor actually reports numbers to Microsoft every month, and it reports to the partners that are included in that. So that's how you end up getting credit for it. It's a little bit of catch up on the back end with the reporting process, but you do get credit for that sale. And then separately, what happens is, I mentioned that Microsoft has so many incentives and offers right now for you to entice your customers with. And so there are separate websites for incentives that you go to, and sometimes you'll get a check to the customer in your name. Sometimes you'll get a direct check to you, depending on what the program is that you affiliate with. But that's the way that you can actually get the rebate and get credit for a rebate or money back to you through those kind of options through the partner and incentives direct from Microsoft. But just know, when you buy from the distributor, you do get credit because Microsoft provides the reporting, including your partner name attached to it whenever you're working through that. So one of the things that we have to understand a little bit is why we as partners are so special. And the first thing is that we should understand licensing. And I actually have a couple of scenarios that I can walk you through to try and help out with that. And these are items that you would probably see on an exam. So if you don't get these, you have some homework to do. But our goal as partners is to be the experts, right? So we should understand the licensing component of it. We can help out with the deployment and not be the cleanup crew for somebody's mistakes where they got stuck and they didn't know what they were doing. And then we can also make sure they get the right licensing up front the first time. There's one partner that I work a lot with, and he's absolutely hysterically funny. But one of the things that he always says is, I don't worry about this licensing. I just tell the customer E3. E3, when in doubt, E3. Just go E3 and you're always covered on absolutely everything. And to a point, he's right. And for his business model, it makes sense to just always sell a standalone E3 SKU because he'll be covered no matter what. It's like the Swiss Army knife of licensing with E3. But if you are looking to provide specific licensing to match your customer needs and only give them what they need, then that's where understanding the intricacies of licensing becomes really helpful. And if you ever take an exam, you need to know the intricacies anyway. So just understand that you being the partner can actually provide value and save the customer money on their licensing just by giving them guidance. So I have some licensing breakdowns here. I'm going to try and click on them and see if we can connect to them. So give me just a second. And while we're opening this, I just want to do a double check. Harry, does anyone have any questions? I can barely hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Thank you, Grant.
Excellent. So go ahead with your question. So the question, Melanie, is they've sold the partner of record sold some deals but hasn't met the minimums, and it doesn't seem to be compounding, the single sale seat count. Is that still the case, and what are those?
Hold on. Ask it again? That doesn't make sense. Ask it one more time.
So what's the minimum? Can she hear it? Can you hear this? Can you hear that?
I can hear you.
Okay, good.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, that's great. So we are a Microsoft partner, and we are listed as partner on record on our various small business clients that we have.
Okay.
And unfortunately, what you're saying does not match up to what Microsoft tells us. Microsoft tells us that we need to meet a minimum of a certain number dollars of sales in Office 365 or this product all combined in order for them to even count any partner on record fees and give us anything. And this has been the case for, I don't know, maybe 2 years. So has that changed?
Who told you that?
Oh, you call this wonderful number and you sit and hold for a long time? It's the Microsoft Partner Network number? You should try it sometime. It's a great blast.
It is, I know. So, so there's two things going on. Number one is that Microsoft had a Cloud Accelerate program in place until September of last year, and so that meant that you got credit for anything. Now what happens is you enroll in the small business, or the cloud competencies. There are a couple of different competencies, but basically what it says is that you have to sign the MOSPA agreement. You have to make sure that you do this tax form thing for them. And there's two other things. You have to pass a sales assessment test, which is basically a video online and you take an exam. And then there's a possibility that you might have to take one other exam. But the point is, there are workarounds for you just by starting to click on and enroll in your cloud competencies. So I'm sorry, there's like a really big echo in the background. But I would say that there's definitely some resources that are available to you online to validate that rather than sitting on the phone. And in the deck, it's in one of the decks that I have that gives you that resource. But basically what you're looking for is Cloud Sure Step, and that will give you all of the resources that you need to validate and become that cloud partner and start getting POR record fees.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, so that's all great, except the fact that we were a cloud partner when there was the advent of Office 365, and we were part of that cloud acceleration program, and we are actually current small business and medium-sized cloud competency partners. So I'm really missing the whole. What did we do wrong here? Because every one of our sales should count as getting money back, according to what you just said. But
Right.
Microsoft tells us that's not the case. So we've just frankly stopped selling a product that we're just marketing and we're not making any money on.
Okay. So unfortunately, there's definitely something that's dropping somewhere. I'll ask Harry to follow up with you and give you an email address that you can call to start to talk to somebody and verify. Because you're out of New York, right? I know that we're in New York City, but I just need to make sure. Is your office location in New York?
Yes, he is. And Melanie, I'll follow up with him.
Okay, all right, because it's Justin Rivon that he needs to talk to. And if you don't have his email, I'll give it to you so that way you can pass it along.
Hi, Melanie. My name is Brian. I have a question for you. Just you made mention about end users calling up for support and support directing them to speak with the partner on record or the technical contact.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm alone in the experience that I've had in calling support. I am listed as the partner of record on every one of my Office 365 accounts, and when I do call up for support, they don't recognize that. And they have to be, they require you to change the name on the admin of record to your own name before they'll even speak to you, even though you are the partner of record. And this is an ongoing problem that I've experienced myself across multiple clients.
So
and I see some other people. I see some other people here in the room too, shaking their heads, nodding their heads, yes, that they're having the same exact experience that I am.
Yeah, so sometimes, so there's two ways to call in for support. There's you calling in as the partner, and then there's you calling in pretending you're the customer. When you call in pretending you're the customer, they have to go by display name. And so what they'll do to verify you is take a look and say, oh, okay, I don't see you in there because your name and stuff isn't in there that's matching who you're calling in as. So if you're running into that issue, it usually means that you're calling in at the customer instead of as the partner, and you would have to pretend to be somebody within that company. The way around it is to actually start out into support and put in a ticket and say you are POR and put you as the contact person. That way you'll get a call right back, and they have a very quick SLA time on their tickets. And just so that we know.
We have lots of no's here.
Okay, well, I'm just saying that's the way that you can work around it. So whether or not you're putting something as a ticket into the system and claiming in that ticket description that you are the partner of record, that's one very clear way to get around those kind of issues. If you pick up the phone and call direct and you're pretending to be the customer and you're calling the customer support line, that is going to want to verify you as a person, and that's what creates the problem. If you
I want to be, Melanie, to tell everybody here, this is not my forte, managing question and answer periods like this, but I do want to be cognizant of time. So if we have a specific issue like this, where there's a complaint about something not working, those are much better to take offline because they can be longer discussions and create, you know, for lack of a better word, a bitch session. And and that's really not appropriate for everybody's time here because not everybody may have an issue with that. So if we have an issue like this, these two particular things, Melanie and I will take those back and we'll roundtable with the Microsoft folks and get responses back to folks.
Yeah, thank you, Grant. Okay, so
hey, hang on one second.
Sorry.
Okay, another question to take back. They are requesting customer support come back to the U.S.
Oh, yeah. First of all, I'm just the messenger. And second of all, that's not going to be happening anytime soon, unfortunately. So, so yeah.
That's neither Melanie nor I are blue badges, as they call them. So we don't work for Microsoft, but we certainly are advocates on your behalf, and you know, we're partners as well. So we'll do our best. Do you want to take another question, Melanie?
Let's go back into this so that I can get through the licensing part and then give them their quiz, and then we can come back to questions as we have time. Okay, so I'm giving you both small business and enterprise. You'll see on the left-hand side there are other options like nonprofit, things like that. But for today and for this quiz that I have for you coming up, we've got the options here. So on the left-hand side is what's known as the small business SKUs. On the right-hand side, it's known as the enterprise SKUs. And there's a couple of notes that I want to make as I go through this. Number one, in October it was actually October 1st of last year, Microsoft changed the licensing on the small business. And what they said is it's no longer limited to 25 users here and 75 users here. All of the items that you see on the left-hand side in blue are now available for up to 300 users. So we know that the cap on small business typically ends at 250, but Microsoft has included up to 300 licenses here for you. So whether you decide to go open or whether you decide to go subscription with Advisor, direct for the customer, this is what you're looking at as SKU options. So on the left-hand side, like I said, it's up to 300 users that you have the ability to work with, and you're going to see the plans are much different. And I'm just going to go through them and show you at a high level. They range anywhere from $5 a month to $20 a month. The E4 SKU, by the way, is not listed here, but just know it is available for you, and the E4 is going to include the integration to PBX systems and the ability to tie in with a linked server. A lot of people are starting to ask questions that I've seen about how to work in the actual dedicated inbound and outbound phone numbers that are available with the PBX. Can you tie that into Link? The answer is yes, but you need a linked server. You need Office E4. That may change when we start looking at the rebranding of Skype for Business that comes out, but the point is that's the way it is today. Now, just to understand some of these differences, and notice how you've got unlimited users on the right and on the left is 300 users. So for $5 a month, let me just show you what you're getting. You're getting online versions of Office. You're getting file storage, which is 1 terabyte. That's Office, that's OneDrive basically. You're also getting Exchange for that $5 a month, and you're getting SharePoint included with that, and you'll also get things like Yammer. Now, as we get into more complicated options, one of the things that you're going to see in the middle here is called Office 365 Business. And what that says is if the user only needs the version of Office, whether it's on a tablet, their home, whatever, but they need up to 5 copies of that subscription, Office 365 Business is what you give them. Now, the reason why I'm making sure to mention that is because right now, I know a lot of us as partners have onboarded customers to exchange-only plans. And so when the time comes for hardware refreshes and for them to get a new version of Office, you can actually offer them a standalone SKU of Office 365 underneath the small business. If you think it's always going to be under 300 seats for the customer, then you go with the Office 365 Business here, and they pay only $8.25 per month. Okay, and then when we get into Office 365 Business Premium, it's basically a combination of these two, culminating at $12.50 a month. One of the other things that I want to make sure to tell you is that as of October 1 of last year, you have the ability to switch and mix and match plans between this small business that we see on the left and enterprise that we see on the right. So for example, in a lot of cases with customers, we would onboard them to the enterprise E1 exchange plan. So in other words, there's an E1 exchange only plan that we could give them, and that's what they did. So I'm just saying that because if you're in that situation where you've sold them an enterprise equivalent of exchange and paying $4 a month, for an extra $8.25 a month, you can just tack on the license, or you can swap out their subscription if it's Advisor altogether. So for example, for $8 a month here, we're seeing that the starting base is going to give you all of the basics. It's going to give you the online web apps. It's going to give you SharePoint. It's going to give you OneDrive. It's going to give you all of your Exchange in here. It's going to give you Yammer. That's what the corporate social network thing is. And then you're also going to see that it's going to give you a corporate video portal. I'm mentioning that because upload sizes now for videos within SharePoint are at 2 gig or on OneDrive for 2 gig. And so if you have company videos for customers that need to be uploaded for training purposes, that's available now on the enterprise SKU, not available in small business. The other thing too is
Melanie?
Yeah.
Two questions. Do you want to take them?
Let's hold off because I've got to finish getting through this and give them their quiz, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that. So then the other thing that we'll see is that there's a personalized search and discovery across 365 using Graph. So Graph is a new technology that has come in, and it's not available for all plans, but it's available for a lot of them, as you'll see across the screen. But what Graph does is it says, let's see how the user works in their day, and let's do a search across how they're working, put some analytics behind it, and give us the equivalent of Cortana, where it does machine learning in the background to give you quick results and common things that you would look for. Call it a different name called Graph and make it available through Office 365. So just know there's something called Graph and there's something called Delve that are part of 365. And because of time constraints, we don't talk about it today, but just know that those are available for 365 plans. And so when you're seeing here line items across the screen that they have the option to use Graph, it's basically saying, let's see how they're working in their day and come up with some quick search answers to help them. The other thing that you're going to start to see that's not included with the small business is the enterprise management of apps. So, for example, if you want to lock down apps through group policy, activation for shared items, things like that, you really do need the enterprise version of those kind of things because you have options within the portal to lock that stuff down. So just know that's a little bit of a difference between enterprise and between the regular small business. The other thing too, and what's hiding out here is the name of the item, but when it comes to legal hold or IRM, information rights management, or DLP, data loss prevention, where you want to put in something that says, I don't want credit card information for this customer going out, I want to block it, things like that. Those are all DLP policies that we know within Exchange. Those options are only available with E3 licensing. And so just so that you know, if you do need somebody to have all those special features, then it's not just a traditional Exchange-only option, and you can't put them in the small business package, you have to go with E3. So those are going to be your limitations when we're talking about E3. If you need compliance or archiving or things like that, like E3 is the best. Otherwise, you can mix and match and get around it with the rest of these kind of SKUs. Okay? So those are the items of highlights there for the licensing. And so now, just to kind of take you back, give me just a moment so that I can, I mentioned that I already have a virus on this computer. And it's a brand new clean machine, by the way. So I just have to give it a second for it to recognize, and then I can go back in. So it's refreshing now. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go in and resume the slideshow and then continue walking you through this. Hopefully it will take it. There we go. All right. So that was the licensing option. And as this screen is changing, just a quick mention that I have so many slides in all of my decks. So just know that these slides are available for you to download. Anything that I cover today is available for you as a download, and there are a lot of things hiding. So make sure, if you haven't already learned how to download those, that you find out how to download them. On the agenda page, it should be on the back of the agenda page that tells you how to be able to download. It's a small little square piece or rectangle piece of paper, but on the back it'll tell you how to download that. So make sure to download these so that you can look at them later. Okay, so here are the 3 scenarios, and because I'm remoting in and can't interact with you so great right now, I'm just going to walk you through them and tell you what the answer would be, and then you can look at it a little bit later if you have any questions on it. So scenario 1, and I tried to include items that would be fake companies, and it turns out Rockstar is an energy drink, for those of you that don't know. So Rockstar has old technology, so these are supposed to be fake companies. And I'm giving you these scenarios to tell you one of 2 things. If you need to take a 365 exam, then you need to know the licensing, and you need to know how to mix and match and make it very intricate. The other thing, too, is that if you do want to make this available as options and be a licensing expert for your customers and onboarding them and making sure they have the right thing, then this will be very helpful as scenarios, too. So this customer has 10 users, and so as I give you this information, only focus on what you're given. And I'm making sure to be very clear because the exams are the same way. You only focus on the information given. Don't think about the big picture, just think about what data you're given in that moment to make a decision. And that's where we come up with these. So the customer has 10 users, they're a mix. 7 have Office 2003, so they're on old technology, right? And then 3 are Mac with Office 2004, old technology too, because the latest that we know is out there is 2013 for PC version, 2011 for Mac. I'm not counting the 2016 stuff because it's not general availability, it's preview only. And they're looking to upgrade hardware with a combination of laptops and tablets for Microsoft Office. So the question is, what would we prescribe for them as a license? And the answer for that is that we would give them 10 copies of either standalone Office Pro Plus, or we would give them Office 365 Business, which was that middle SKU, $8.25 a month. And this usually trips up a lot of people because they'll say, well, why aren't we giving them E3 or E1 or any of those? And the answer is you only focus on the data that you're given. The only concern right now is that they want to upgrade with Office. They didn't mention anything about mail. They didn't mention anything about document storage, all of that. So that's why we just prescribe the standalone Office there. So in scenario 2, this one is super complex. So I'll try and walk you through it because I know the writing is a little bit small for those of us in the room. So they have 100 users in total. 10 of them are Mac. 3 of them are shared computers, and usually this is what happens when we walk into a new client and get the data dump of all of the info. They have a mix of 2010, 2011 Office. 25 are going to get a hardware refresh as they go live onto Office 365. The rest are going to be cycled over time. Those 3 shared PCs and Macs are not going to be a part of that. They're going to have 25 multiple devices, including tablets. Those are the ones getting the hardware refresh. No IRM or archiving needed that we know that comes with the E3 plan. They use Exchange and network drives, but they're looking at intranet and web conferencing. So there's not going to be one mix that's going to fit all of this as best practice. So what we'd have to do is do a mix and match. So the first thing we need to do is take 100 users minus 3. And the reason why is because those 3 shared computers can go as shared mailboxes. So that's 97 licenses. The shared mailboxes are 3. Then we get 25 E3 or Small Business Premium. We could buy 69 of E1 or Office 365 Business Essentials, and we can buy 3 Office Pro Plus or Office 365 Business. So that's how you would end up licensing all that out. And I'm just skipping through it quickly due to time, but you can take a look at this later when you download it. The last scenario that I want to mention to you is Stellar. Stellar, which again I'm assuming is a big company name, has Office 365 already. They have 20 users that are on Business Essentials, and they need unlimited archiving and IRM. So the unlimited archiving and IRM we can only get through E3, which is why the answer for this would be to change the plan from what they have now over to E3 for all users. And as long as it's the advisor plan, then they can switch it no problem. If it's open licensing that you purchased for them, they'd have to wait until their term is near and then pre-buy for the open licensing for the following year or switch over to advisor at that point. So as you can see, the licensing gets very complex and fun and complicated to figure out, but that's kind of the fun of it, is that you get to see how much you can absorb and learn and then, you know, be that licensing expert to everyone else. So I'm moving on to the next slide for a minute, and I'm just pointing this out. I'm not going to actually go through these, but this is...
And Melanie?
Yeah.
Yeah, hey, probably about 5 minutes, just a heads up.
Okay,
and,
awesome.
Then we'll move on. Thanks.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so just to point out, these are some questions that we get with Office 365, and to kind of help you point in the right direction, the general manager of the East Region, Nancy Williams, is the one that actually put this deck together, and I promised that I would share it out with everyone. So you'll have this available in the download, but it's basically asking you some questions toward the customer and then helping you get the right answers with that same screen that I initially showed you. So just know that you'll have that as a lifeline, and you can actually you know, take a look at that and absorb it later on. So there's more information in the back of this deck. I'm ending at the thank you now. We'll take a couple of questions, and then I'll see you in a little bit for both the making money and the SharePoint piece. So Grant, Harry, any questions?
Okay. Yeah, we have some questions. Grant was on. Who hasn't asked a question? Just unfair, and we'll get to people who have questions. You've not asked a question, Greg? Okay.
Hey, Melanie, it's Greg Plum.
Hey.
Hey. So you mentioned the commission on the purchase is 6 to 20% depending on the level of partner. What about the renewals? And can you address the pricing provided by the distributors? Is that a buy-sell type model, and what kind of levels what type of pricing we're looking at with that?
So, so as far as renewals, the renewals go down just a little bit, and it depends on what level you're at. So I'll just say it's down a little bit. It drops a couple of points on renewals per year after that. But then as far as the distributor piece goes, the pricing it's actually not that far off from the advisor model on a month-to-month basis. It might be, you know, just a few dollars difference, but it's pretty comparable, generally speaking. The other thing too on the buy-sell piece is, yes, you're basically buying it on behalf of the customer, and it works the exact same way that what we call perpetual licensing works. So in other words, that standalone license that you would buy for Office all these years, that's the way that it works. So if you didn't buy OEM on a machine and you bought separate through an existing distributor over the years, that's the exact approach that it takes with Office 365.
111. There we go. Next question, and we have just a couple of minutes left, so maybe 2 more questions.
Thank you. Hi, Melanie. This is Brian again.
Hey.
Two really quick questions for you. One is just regarding, and you mentioned this, and I see this all over the place about having under these plans the ability of installing these Office applications on your iPad, your Androids. I'm just a little confused regarding that because aren't these apps free regardless of whether you're an Office 365 customer?
The answer is yes, they're free to download, and they do have limited options with the free version. If you have a plan that allows you to, like you have an Office 365 plan as part of your tablet subscription, you unlock 2 additional editing capabilities. So there are very, very few features that come by default for free. But you can work around that by having the subscription and get a supported option that's available for you with some extra editing capabilities, things like that.
Gotcha. Thank you. My second question was regarding the Office 365. You mentioned before about if you have a customer that's on Business Essentials and you're now doing a hardware refresh and they need versions of Office, that you could then sell them the Office 365 Business.
That's right.
My question to you is, why not just put them into the Business Premium plan at that point? Melanie? Did my question scare you off? Yeah, really?
We'll see if
And from the Microsoft standpoint, it's not a bad thing. What happens is licensed as one SKU, right? So if the price is the same, the $8 plus, the $5 is roughly the same as $12.50, and you're good with it, then what people will do when the time comes for the hardware refresh is add another separate SKU, and the reason that they do that is because they get credit for that user of 2 licenses instead of 1.
Melanie, you're fading in and out. We think the Chinese government has caught up to you with the sun coming up. So I'll tell you what, we're at time. Melanie, thank you so much for the presentation. How about a round of applause? There we go. So big round of applause. Thank you so much, Melanie, and we'll talk to you in a couple of hours. Thank you.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks.